Chapter 39. And now Hercufleas knows what he must do inside Yuck's brain to free him from the rattlesnake tree which is controlling him. The rattleroot's fangs gleamed as it lunged for Greta. Then a dozen black specks hopped onto its head, the fleamily. They all bit down together, and the rattleroot hissed in pain, twisting in the air. Seizing her chance, Greta scooped up her axe and lopped the snake head off. The root went rigid as a stick and fell on her lap, poisonous sap dribbling from its severed neck. She stared down at the tiny creatures that had just saved her life. "Brr," said Burp, hopping about and spitting. "Rattlesnake sap tastes disgusting." A second flea hopped down beside the first. "Be careful, everyone," Min cried. "Resist any urge to slither about and be evil. Remember, you are what you eat." "Yes, Min," said Dot. She shook her head. Yes. Pin hopped onto Greta's shoulder. "We'll provide a distraction while you chop down the trunk. Kill those rattleroots at the source. It's the only way we'll escape." Greta blinked stupidly at the limp root in her lap. "Quick!" Min nipped her hard. "Get chopping!" Jolted by the bite, Greta scooped up her axe, scrambling to her feet. Suddenly the air was full of whizzing black smudges. The fleamily were everywhere, taunting the rattleroots. If you taunt someone, you sort of tease them and distract them, and they're kind of being a little bit mean to them. The fleamily were everywhere, taunting the rattleroots, then hopping away from their lunges. Tittle star-jumped, Itch somersaulted, Jot did the double pike cross-split topsy-turvy manoeuvre. The rattleroots tied themselves up in hissing, writhing knots. There we are. So there's the fleamily, all doing their different acrobatics to get the rattleroots confused while Greta's going to try and cut down the trunk, which is where the whole problem is, isn't it? "Hurry," said Min. "We can't keep this up forever." Greta looked at the thick trunk. She raised her axe and swung it into the tree. Thunk. Green sap hissed from the gash in the bark, but it was only the tiniest nick. It would take another 100 strokes to bring the rattlesnake down. Thunk. 99. Thunk. 98. Thunk. Inside Yuck's brain, Hercufleas leaped from thread to shining thread. He gritted his teeth. His sword gleamed in his hand, and his plan was keen in his head. He had to free the noggins fast. Who knew how many Tumberfolk had followed Mayor Clare and Mrs. Lorenz down into Yuck's belly? He crept up beside the first rattleroot. With one slice from M, it dropped off the noggin like loose ribbons on an unwrapped present. "I'm free," gasped the noggin, who introduced itself as vocabulary. "Liberated, unchained, emancipated." Hercufleas grinned, flexed his powerful legs and jumped up, beheading another 2 rattleroots and freeing 2 more noggins, who told them their names were Optimism and Pessimism. So this is all the different parts of your brain. Optimism is when you see the good side of things that are going to happen, and pessimism is when you see the bad side of things that are going to happen. "I always knew this day would come," one cried. "Bet it won't last," muttered the other. Can you work out which one was optimistic and which one was pessimistic? On Hercufleas went, slicing dozens of rattleroots, freeing dozens of noggins. He freed Empathy, who began to weep for the dead rattleroot at its feet. Philanthropy, who began to help other noggins escape. And Apathy, who yawned, shrugged, and carried on doing nothing. Those are 3 good words to discuss with an adult. Empathy, philanthropy is when you help other people, and apathy. Slowly the rattlesnake began to lose control of Yuck. Brilliant. Hercufleas freed 2 more noggins called Yawn and Stretch. And outside, the giant stopped guzzling to yawn and stretch as if it was waking up from the longest sleep. He freed Vomit. And suddenly Miss Wits and Artifacts, floundering in Yuck's stomach acid, found themselves puking back up his throat. They spewed out into the air, reeking, clothes and feathers half digested, but alive. Now, all around Yuck's brain, noggins chattered to each other and bright white lights pulsed back and forth along the threads between them as their hands plucked the strings. Hercufleas hurtled over the next rattle root, slicing it to pieces. "What's your name?" he said to the noggin he'd just freed. "Grab," was the answer. "Grab?" Hercufleas thought for a moment. Then he grinned. "Grab? Listen, I've got an idea." Outside Yuck's head, the battle raged too. The Fleemily jumped and somersaulted, dodging the rattle roots, but slowly they were being beaten back to the tree's trunk. Again and again Greta hefted her axe in the air and struck the rattlesnake's trunk. Thunk! The seed pods in the branches shivered and shook. Greta swung again. Thunk! "Hurry!" Pin cried as the fleas were pressed back and back. "Hurry, child!" Thunk! The bark was too tough. It would take Greta dozens more strokes to bring the rattlesnake down unless... She readied one last swing and struck with all her might, for Mama and Papa and Wuff, for everyone. Thunk! The axe quivered in the trunk, still only halfway through. Hot tears coursed down her cheeks. No good. They were out of time. The Fleemily had nowhere left to jump. The writhing rattle roots had them completely surrounded. Greta knew this was the end, but instead of fear, a different feeling filled her. Surrender. Soon it would be over. All the hurt and heartache, all the suffering and struggling, it was all about to fall away to nothingness. All she had to do was give up. She wanted to give up, to feel nothing. Oh dear, poor Greta.